The landed values of different fisheries and species are obtainable in the government notice number 158 of 26 June 2017. A person who engages in harvesting in Namibian waters in terms of a right, an exploratory right or fisheries agreement must pay a levy at a rate of 0.9% of the landed value of each fishery and per species in the form in which it is landed, as determined by the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources. Joining us now with more information on the current funding model for the agency is the chairperson of the Fisheries Observer Agency, Inocencio Verde. Mr. Verde, good morning.
A very good morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Kindly just provide us with an overview of the current funding model for the Fisheries Observer Agency.
Well, thank you. In terms of the Marine Resource Act, the funding model basically is that resource that basically sustain the operations of the Fisheries Observer Agency, where each and every participant in the fishing industry basically contributes towards that particular funding. Without the funding, basically the agency will not be sustainable.
All right.
In a nutshell.
All right. What would you say are some of the main challenges or issues associated with the existing funding model?
Well, I think when we talk of the challenges, we really mainly focus basically on the hardship that the agency is facing. And I think it's also important that first we have to give context. Okay. Now, when we speak of the funding model, this funding model was basically introduced in 2014 already, and 2014 is basically 10 years from now. And it's based on a landed value, so it's based on a fixed value, which was not basically changed over the last 10 years. And you know that everything else did change. You know, fuel has gone up, and prices of bread is no longer, you know, $7 as it used to be. So the costs in terms of basically the cost of operations for the agency have reached or have surpassed basically that we collect.
So it's time for a change?
It's time for a change.
Okay.
And it's for that reason that basically the funding module needs to, or the landed value basically needs to be reviewed such that the effectiveness of the agency is not compromised.
All right.
Yeah.
But what would you say are some of the day-to-day challenges affected, that affect the day-to-day, what are some of the challenges that affect the day-to-day operations and effectiveness of the Fisheries Observers Agency?
Okay, so in terms of our mandate, we are to collect data, we are to monitor the fishing, the fishing that happens at sea, and with this reason, we have to send observers to sea. Okay. Now, when the funding model is not sufficient, then it means that our coverage in terms of the vessels gets compromised. So we will obviously send less observers to sea, and at the end of the day, this will lead to many other ripple effects, you know, where you'll have overfishing happening, you will have depletion of resources that our children or children's children who are supposed to benefit at the end of the day will not be able to see all these things. Yeah. So the essence or the importance of the funding model cannot be overemphasized. It is important that as a country and as a nation we need to come together, as a sector we need to come together and agree to this such that we can ensure that there is a proper monitoring and evaluation and there is proper, you know, regulations, you know, regulating the fishing practice in the sea.
Amazing. Now, but before we all come together, are there perhaps any proposed solutions or alternatives being discussed to address the funding challenges? Yes,
and mind you, I really want to thank the Ministry of Fisheries under the leadership of his Honorable Derek Claassen, as well as the ED, who have really, you know, over the last couple of months have gone out speaking to the industry, emphasizing on the importance of reviewing the landed values. And I think we are quite at an advanced stage now where basically all the industries in terms of the 10 species or associations were now consulted. And we believe that in the next couple of weeks or or months, we should be able to have sort of a determinant factor on the result.
All right. Let's talk legislation. What role does it play when it comes to funding the Fisheries Observers Agency? And also, are there perhaps any upcoming legislative changes that could impact the funding?
Well, the only aspect as far as the legislation is concerned is that the part of the review, it's not really strengthened. Okay. And I think that is what the current industry is now consulting on. And if that can be sort of highlighted, that will go a long way in sort of changing the legislation as far as the funding module is concerned. But on other aspects, I think Namibia is one of the countries that best manages its fishery, and I think we have got countries around Africa that are coming to sort of, you know, benchmark against our agency, given obviously the number of experience as well as our expertise in the fishery sector.
All right.
Yeah.
But how transparent is the agency regarding its funding sources and expenditure? Is the public able to access the financial information?
Yes, okay. Yes. So no, the agency is obviously established in terms of the Marine Resource Act, which obviously compels that we are a state-owned enterprise, and by that we are compelled basically to submit our financial reports, our financial statements on an annual basis. I mean, if you visit on our website, you will find all that information.
All right.
Yeah.
But are funding constraints affecting the agency's ability to perhaps invest in new technologies and methodologies when it comes to monitoring and data collection?
Exactly, it is. So if you have lack of resources, it will obviously hamper you to be able to execute that you are mandated on. And I think for now the agency, I will say that if we do not review the landed values, we cannot even think about the improvement in technology and so forth and so on. In fact, we are already understaffed. We are already providing sort of a coverage of about less than 47%, and this is a problem. It is becoming a challenge, and if we do not address that, it means that there are vessels going to sea without a fishery observer. Yeah. So you can imagine what can happen at sea when you do not have somebody watching you.
All right.
Yeah.
But are there perhaps any international aids or international aid or partnerships that are out there that are perhaps just helping with the fund of the agency?
No. At the moment, we are exploring those options of obviously partnering up with some of the international partners, and also have some strategic partnerships around Africa. But in the meantime, basically we are solely dependent on the ministry and the government, basically to, in any case, to sort of support us in the event of a shortfall.
All right.
Yeah.
Talk to us about some of the future prospects.
Well, so one of those issues is basically for us to change the whole financial, the funding model, that at least we can be able to have more of sort of, you know, funding options for the agency.
10 years later.
You know, and of course also what we are looking at is for us to introduce basically international fisheries observer. So where we train internationally acclaimed fisheries observers who can go anywhere in the world, you know, to be able to practice the same that is done in the country. But on that note, we will be able to communicate much more in the coming weeks.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Verde, thank you so much for making time to come on to Good Morning Namibia and talk to us.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.
That was Inocencio Verde, who is the chairperson of the Fisheries Observers Agency, joining us this morning.